filmmaking? Well, it was kind of like an indirect route. I didn't study cinema, I didn't go to school, I didn't learn filmmaking formally. I came through it through journalism, actually. I was working in a radical left-wing newspaper, and we were covering social justice issues and so forth. And we became involved in international solidarity affairs, especially with the Philippines. This was in the 1980s, in the mid-1980s. And I was with my partner, Malcolm Guy, and he also was, we were working at, you know, at the same newspaper, and we were started doing radio documentaries. Actually, Malcolm started doing radio documentaries because he worked for CBC at one point. And we became involved in the movement against the Marcos dictatorship in the Philippines. So this is something that took up a lot of our activist energy, and we were very inspired by the people's movement there, and we really wanted to make it better known in Canada, because it was the reports about it were rather limited. And we were, you know, so struck by the strength and the innovation and the power of the people's movement there, that we really wanted to share that. And so we had a friend who was a filmmaker, and he was making a film about the people power movement in the Philippines. And we went with him. Malcolm went and became the sound man on the shoot, which was shot in 16 millimeter, and it was quite a, you know, an elaborate thing in those days. And that's how, you know, and then I also became exposed to realities in the Philippines, and we, you know, became familiar with, for example, myself, with the women's movement there. And one thing led to another, and it was through that inspiration that we came to make our first films. So our first films were made in the Philippines about the people's movement. The End of Immigration was, it was a follow-up, actually, to several other films we had made in the past 10 or 15 years, because out of our interest in the Philippines came also an interest in migration, issues of migration and migrant workers. Both myself and Malcolm Guy, the co-director, my partner, are immigrants to Canada. I came from Hungary and Malcolm came from England, and we came as children. But we've always been, you know, felt that, been able to relate to that immigrant experience, because our families were, you know, with other immigrants, migrants. And so we've always been sensitive to issues of migrant workers. And all the more so when, after these early films that we made in the Philippines, when we came back to Canada and we're looking at some subjects for future documentaries, the thing that grew out of our social practice, so to speak, was the issue of migrant Filipino workers, because the main group of people, especially women migrants coming to Canada at the time in the early 1980s or mid 1980s, were Filipino women coming to work as live-in caregivers and domestics. And so this was also a result of the policies and the conditions in the Philippines, which we had already documented. So it was one thing led to another. So we made several films about conditions of migrant workers, especially the live-in caregivers. And we thought that we had done enough of that, because we made, I think, 3 or 4 films on that subject. One was called Brown Women, Blonde Babies, and we made Modern Heroes, Modern Slaves, and we made another one called When Strangers Reunite, and a short film called The Melka Salvador Story. So we had really covered, you know, the issues of migrant workers quite well, but you know, we were very connected to migrant communities, and when they started talking about you know, this new shift in Canadian immigration policy, which was going to cut off the possibility of workers coming to settle in Canada as permanent residents, and on the contrary, maintain a permanent temporary class of workers here, we felt that, you know, we felt compelled to to revisit the subject of migrant workers in Canada and look at this trend, which was very alarming for us because we became aware of it because of the headlines of terrible abuse and injustice that was being perpetrated against these workers. So we felt, kind of compelled to do another film about it, and it's called La fin de l'immigration, or the end of immigration. I'm working on several projects, but they're in early stages of development. But rather, what I'm devoting a lot of my time to is the work of distribution of the end of immigration, but also many other films, including films that we take in to distribute that are not our own. So I think this it might lead up with another issue or another subject that we might want to talk about is distribution of documentaries. About 5 or 6 years ago, we set up a distribution company called Diffusion because there is so poor resources available for distribution of documentaries, and it's a shame because people invest so much of themselves, as documentary filmmakers. You do it for the love of, the subject, because you want to, inform and mobilize people about things that, are of concern to you and that you think should be, taken up by broader masses of people. And so, it's very disheartening to see all the work that you do and then just to have it sitting on a shelf, or perhaps even, have it, you have it on television, go through its television run, and then that's it, So I think that there is room and there is a need to get those documentaries out to the audiences, and especially the people who are on the ground and who are active or want to do something about issues of concern. And so that's what we wanted to do with Diffusion Multimonde. So now we're distributing our own films and other films as well. Why documentary as opposed to other media forms? I was involved in other media forms, journalism, before, and I found that journalism is good for transmitting facts. Also, for people who are good writers, you also can elicit emotion and impel people to act. But we found that really the visual media, the television and video, are really things that reach people's hearts. The best. Anyway, one of the best. And so we just thought that was the medium that that was the best suited for what we wanted to devote our lives to, really, because our filmmaking is an extension of our activism. We get our inspiration from our social practice, which is involved in community groups and international solidarity issues and groups, and so and we bring the skills that we've developed over the years as filmmakers to serve those causes. So, and we find that's it seems to be what works quite well, and and we've managed to portray the people, their struggles, their courage, the strength, and the vitality of those individuals and movements in a way that I think contributes to perpetuating, increasing, broadening their causes. So I think that it becomes quite rewarding as well. Well, I think there's many. It's interesting because Malcolm works in that field a lot. He's part of this international group called People's Art. In developing the society of the future. I think it's because you can say things just in simple words. You can use writing, but you capture people's imagination through art, and I think that without art, life is pretty dull. And so, I think that as documentary filmmakers, you want to develop your methods, your ways of working, so that they're the most creative and imaginative possible. So you're constantly learning and trying to improve in order to seize that, to capture what is going to really spark a light or an inspiration in people. I think that the work that Cinema Politica is doing is absolutely fabulous. I have been so amazed to see the spread of Cinema Politicas around the country and around the world, and it just shows, I mean, it's very heartening because we made a series of films called Rebel Music, which was about music and politics, and we started doing that about 10 years ago. And at the time it was like political music was off the radar. It wasn't something that was common. And I think also even in the film world and in the documentary world for a long time, there was kind of like a bit of a void, and people were going a lot into experimental video and so forth. I saw this in some of the video collectives that we had been involved in. And so I think Cinema Politica is the rise of Cinema Politica shows that people are interested in politics and they want to know alternate views of what's going on in the world and be able to engage in changing the world in that way. And I think Cinema Politica is playing a very important role in that sense.